Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens is one of the most beloved works of the 19th century literature, and the story's enormous popularity helped make Christmas a major holiday in Victorian Britain. When Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol in late 1843, he had ambitious purposes in mind, yet he could never have imagined the profound impact his story would have. What A Christmas Carol succeeded at doing was establishing Christmas in Britain as a cultural phenomenon, as well as a holiday. It's a story about a miser who completely changes his character after being visited by the ghost of his former partner, who introduces him to three more ghosts who represent past, present, and future. It served then and still serves now as an instruction manual for how not to conduct oneself at Christmas. Shunning family members, being rude and uncharitable, underpaying one's employees, and avoiding confronting one's inner demons were all traits that Dickens assigned to Scrooge specifically to be corrected through a series of supernatural encounters designed to spook the money out of his pockets. It works. And yet Dickens was a writer, not an occultist, and he couldn't sick ghost on real-life men who inspired Ebenezer Scrooge, though one can imagine that he very much would have liked to done so. There is a whole batch of men identified by Dickens scholars as prototypes for Scrooge, and none of them experienced Scrooge's life-changing turnaround and change of heart. Dickens took their lives and applied some wishful thinking to change a fictional representative's fate. Ebenezer Scrooge is one of the most iconic characters in literature, created by Charles Dickens in his 1843 novella, A Christmas Carol. The miserly and cold-hearted businessman who despises Christmas and is transformed by the visits of three spirits has become a symbol of redemption and festive spirit. But who was the real person behind this fictional character? And why did Dickens choose to name him after a Scottish corn merchant whose grave he stumbled upon in Edinburgh? Here are his inspirations. The misread tombstone. The story goes that in 1841, Dickens was visiting Edinburgh for a lecture and decided to take a walk along the Royal Mile, the historic street that connects the Edinburgh Castle and the Holyrood Palace. As he passed through the Canongate Kirkyard, a cemetery that dates back to the 17th century, he noticed a gravestone that caught his attention. It belonged to Ebenezer Scroggy, who had died in 1836 at the age of 70. Scroggy had been a successful corn trader and vintner who had supplied Captain James Cook's ship Endeavour as it charted the Pacific. He had also served as Edinburgh's Lord Provost, the equivalent of a mayor, for 2 years. On his tombstone, he was described as a millman, meaning a corn merchant. However, in the dim light of the evening, Dickens misread the inscription as a mean man. He was struck by the contrast between the prosperous and respected life that Scroggy had led and the harsh judgment that his epitaph seemed to convey. He later wrote in his personal notebook that to be remembered through eternity only for being mean seemed the greatest testament to a life wasted. He was so intrigued by this idea that he decided to use it as the basis for his next story, which he wrote in just 6 weeks and published in time for Christmas 1843. He changed the name of his protagonist slightly from Scroggy to Scrooge and created a character who was the opposite of the real-life corn merchant, a miser who had no friends, no family, and no joy in life. Dickens' story was an instant success, and Scrooge became a household name. The novella had been adapted into countless films, plays, musicals, and cartoons, and has influenced the way people celebrate Christmas around the world. However, the grave that inspired Dickens to write his masterpiece was not so fortunate. In 1932, the Canongate Kirkyard underwent some construction work, and Scroggy's tombstone was removed and lost. No one knows what happened to it, and no trace of it has ever been found. The only evidence of its existence is a photograph taken by a local historian in 1908, which shows the inscription clearly. The disappearance of Scroggy's grave has added to the mystery and fascination surrounding his life and his connection to Dickens. Many people have tried to find out more about him, and some have even claimed to be his descendants. In 2014, a political economist named Peter Clark published a book titled The Real Life of Ebenezer Scrooge, in which he revealed new details about Scroggy's career, personality, and achievements. He argued that Scroggy was not only a successful businessman, but also a philanthropist, a patriot, and a bon vivant who enjoyed parties and women and wine. He was also known for his eccentricities, such as wearing a wig made of his own hair, and his sense of humor, such as Goose and the Countess of Mansfield during the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland. Clark concluded that Scroggy was a remarkable and an admirable man who deserved to be remembered for more than being mean. John Elwes. John Elwes, today credited as the real-life Scrooge. Elwes, born John Megget in 1714, was a member of Pair Alignment who was known for his miserliness. His father, Robert Megget, was a respected London brewer who died when John was only 4 and left an inheritance of $100,000, equivalent to a couple of $100 million today. Although wealthy, John's mother reportedly starved herself to death because she was too mean to spend her money on her well-being. Mean being a penny pincher? Greedy? John grew up to be a party-going, hedonistic, and generous man, a scholar at Westminster who liked high society and enjoyed writing and traveling abroad. The main reason he changed his way of living and turned into a miser was his greediness for another inheritance, his uncle's. Sir Harvey Elwes died in 1763, leaving his estate worth $250,000, equivalent to $23 million today, to his nephew John, who even changed his name to Elwes to inherit that money. With an eye on the fabulous fortune, John gave up his extravagant, rich life to impress his uncle. But after Sir Elwes's death, instead of enjoying the wealth, John remained unimaginably stingy. He lived in a mansion with many rooms equipped with luxury furniture, but during the winter, the young Elwes would spend most of his time in the kitchen with his servants so that he didn't have to light another fire in the living room. Refusing to pay money for maintenance on his house, water started dripping from every hole in the roof, and the grand furniture fell into a state of complete decay. He wore ragged clothes everywhere he went, and he even slept in them. Sometimes he was even mistaken for a beggar and given handouts, much to his joy. His meals consisted of a single hard-boiled egg and a pancake which he kept cold in his pocket. He regularly ate moldy food, and one rumor was that he even ate a rotten moorhen he took from a rat. The miser wore a tatty wig he found discarded in a hedge, avoided paying coaches even on rainy days, and sat in wet clothes to save the wood for the fire. One story has it that Elwes hurt both of his legs while walking in the dark and allowed an apothecary to treat only one while wagering his fee that the untreated would heal first. He won the bet and refused to pay the doctor. Interestingly, according to John Elwes' friend, despite being so incredibly tight with spending on himself, his generosity was renowned. His public character lives after him pure and without stain. In private life, he was chiefly an enemy to himself. He was elected as a member of Parliament for Berkshire in 1772 and remained at that position for 12 years. He paid a whopping 18 pence in election expenses, and after 3 mandates, he retired because he didn't want to spend money on being re-elected. Whenever he traveled to London for his job, Elwes rode a horse rather than ride in a carriage to avoid spending money on expensive turnpike tolls. On the other hand, he was always quick to lend money and never asked for repayment, deeming asking for such things below a gentleman. He also made a lot of investments and financed many building developments in London, some of which remain today, such as Piccadilly, Portman Square, and the famous Baker Street. To others, he lent much. To himself, he denied everything. But in the pursuit of his property, or in the recovery of it, I have it not in my remembrance one unkind thing that ever was done by him, said Edward. John Elwes immersed himself in full-time miserliness. On his death in 1789, he left $500,000, almost $1 billion in today's money, to his 2 illegitimate sons. Thomas Robert Malthus. Malthus was a demographer and an important economist who is today best remembered for his theory, popularly called Malthusian trap. In essence, it describes his observation of population growth in a relation to food production increase. Every time food production grows, the population growth follows. Instead of the higher standard, it seems people prefer to have more children. Malthus believed only the strongest should survive and poor people should not be helped because in the future there would not be enough food for all anyway. Jimmy Wood. James Jimmy Wood was a banker. He inherited Gloucester Old Bank from his grandfather and run it so efficiently it survived all kinds of business challenges. Jimmy was said to be so frugal he walked everywhere to save on money for carriages and once even slept in a place reserved for the dead. He also took long walks on the banks of Gloucester where he could find many small pieces of coal, useful for heating. Once he supposedly challenged a man who mocked his old clothes into a bet. If he could withdraw 100,000 pounds, the other guy should pay him 5 pounds. Jimmy Wood won, of course. It is not clear how many anecdotes about his miserliness are true, but the surviving documents show he was an active member of society, what distinguishes him from literary Ebenezer. John Dickens. Charles's own father could be another important influence on creating the character of Ebenezer Scrooge. John Dickens was greatly responsible for many problems in the early years of his son. Ebenezer shares with him his cold, cruel, and greedy approach in the first part of the book, yet also shows the other, loving side which was undoubtedly seen by Charles and his father. The legacy of Scrooge. His transformation from a cold, unfeeling miser to a man of generosity and compassion encapsulates the power of redemption and the human capacity for change. Dickens, through his life experiences and observations of Victorian England's social conditions, crafted Scrooge as a symbol of the era's harsh economic disparities. His personal encounters with poverty, the prevalent workhouse system, and the widespread disregard for the lower classes all informed the creation of this timeless character. Scrooge's journey of redemption is not only a personal one, but also an allegory for societal change. His transformation serves as a call for empathy, compassion, understanding, urging readers to look beyond their self-interest. Through Scrooge, Dickens has left us with a character who is not just a reflection of his times, but an enduring symbol of hope and transformation. His journey from miserliness to generosity continues to resonate with us today, reminding us of the potential for redemption that lies within us all.